What's up guys, it's Aiden, and today we're going to go through how Drake's Girls Want Girls was made on FL Studio. First off, sorry I've been away for so long. Someone literally went through my entire beat store and bought it all, so I've been spending the last month just making beats. The beats that are playing today in the background will be new ones that are going to be released very soon. So to the person who bought out my store, thanks, but now I've got nothing. This beat was produced by Shebib, Ambezza, and Noah 40 Shebib. And because this is a sponsor video, the FLP will be available for free for everyone in the description below, as well as Somatic's new plugin Origin, which I have used in this remake as well. Let's first jump in with the synth that plays throughout the entire song. If you've seen my previous videos, you know we have a bunch of identical presets and samples from the original song that I will show you today. But first off, I wanted to go through the music theory behind this chord progression and explain what's going on here and how you can replicate this for your own Drake type beats. First off, by the looks of this chord progression, I'm going to say this was made by OZ because he is notorious for using 1/5 chord progressions or variations on the 1/5 chord progression. For example, Sicko Mode, that was a 1/5 chord progression. Highest in the Room, that was a 1/5 chord progression. So that's D minor to A minor, which is a 1/5. Then he moved on to making Life is Good by Drake and Future, which has this 1/5-4/5 chord progression. So that's G minor to D minor, up to C minor to D minor. Then more recently, he produced DJ Khaled and Drake's Pop Stars, which has a 1/4 chord progression. And a 1/4 is about as close to a 1/5 chord progression as you can get, because a 1/4 chord progression is the reverse of a 1/5. So for example, a 1/5 would be G minor to D minor, but a 1/4 would be D minor to G minor. So Pop Stars had a 1/4 chord progression, which was C minor to F minor. And now you can see a variation on the 1/5 chord progression once again. Now this one is pretty subtle. It isn't technically a 1/5 chord progression, but you can find the skeleton of a 1/5 within this chord progression. I'll explain what I mean. Firstly, the key of this song is G minor. But the first chord we're playing is an inverted E flat major 7th chord. So if we ignore the inverted part for now, you can just see an E flat major 7th chord. And if you know much about 7th chords, they're basically like a major and a minor chord in one. So you have an E flat major, as well as a G minor in the one chord. So all of it playing together. And as you can see with an E flat major 7th chord, it contains all the notes for a G minor chord, which is the key of the song, which means that is the one. So in a 1/5 chord progression, G minor is the one. So we can pretend that it starts off with a modified version of the G minor chord. So it moves from this modified G minor to just a normal G minor down to a D minor 7th chord, which contains a D minor chord and an F major chord. But most importantly, it contains the D minor, which in this case would be the 5. So as you can see, this chord progression does contain the 1/5 that OZ has been using so frequently these days. Drake and Travis Scott love to use this chord progression, especially Travis. It's in so many of their biggest songs. And the second thing that's interesting about this chord progression is OZ's use of major and minor 7th chords, which Drake loves to use in his own songs. For example, Drake's Passion Fruit, God's Plan, Marvin's Room, Chicago Freestyle, Hate Sleeping Alone, they all heavily rely on 7th chords. And those chords tend to be more emotional, which Drake loves to rap on. He loves to talk about how he's a lesbian on emotional beats.
Nice shot!
I'm going to give you 2 examples of the same chord progression. One is what not to do when making Drake type beats, and one is what you should be doing when you're making Drake type beats. The first version is just going to be using basic triads, so 3-note chords. The second version is going to be 4-note chords. So this is number 1, what you shouldn't be doing. This is version 2, which is going to sound way more interesting and emotional. So the first version just used basic triads, and the second version made it more complicated by adding 7th notes to those triads to make them 4-note chords. Anyway, that's it for the chord theory. If you want to see some more of that, let me know if you enjoyed that in the comments below. I made this preset in Xband 2. using basic sine pad in soft pads, as well as the Oka pad maker, also in soft pads. It's right there. On the mixer, we're adding some fruity chorus, some RC20 retro color for some noise, wobble, and air distortion, as well as parametric EQ2, just to increase the frequencies at certain points. And after that, it's going to sound like this. Then we're adding in this bass preset. And the way you can figure out what preset you need to use is look at the EQ on the original song. So if I play you some audio from the original, you can look at the sub frequencies and see what frequencies are playing. And when I did it, I figured out it was these 3 points here at 39 Hertz, 78 Hertz, and 117 Hertz. First point is at 39 Hertz, which means if we go into the key, go to D sharp, you can see D sharp 1 is at 39 Hertz. So if I play D sharp 1, you can see it's landing on that point. But you can tell it's not the same as the sub that they were using in the original song. So let's have a look at some different wavetables. Say the triangle, you can see it's hitting at 39 and lightly at 117. Then we have the pulse or the square wavetable, which is hitting more aggressively at these 2 points, but we still need it to play at 78 Hertz. So if we use a saw wavetable, you can see it's playing at 39, 78, and 117 Hertz. So for this bass, they either used a saw wavetable, or a half pulse, or a quarter pulse. But it's not too important what's going on over here because we're adding a low pass filter. So all you're gonna hear are these frequencies below 200 Hertz. So at this point, they're all gonna sound the same because the main differences between these wavetables are happening in these frequencies up here, but we're chopping them out using a low pass filter. So I decided to use a saw wavetable on Repro 1 and add a low pass filter to it. As you can see, hitting the 3 frequencies that we need to be hitting for it to mimic the original song. So that's the sub. Next up, we have the guitar. This is the Ample Guitar TC, which is modeled off the Fender Telecaster, and we're playing the same chords as that synth pad in the beginning. So it's going to sound like this without any effects. Then on the mixer, we're turning it down to -20 decibels, so it's pretty quiet. Then for effects, we're adding Valhalla Room, which is a reverb plugin. Then we're adding Cymatics's Origin plugin to decrease the sample rate to 10,000 Hertz. And this is the first plugin that I've seen that directly decreases the sample rate within the mixer. So you don't have to record the audio into Edison, then format it, then bring it back into the playlist. And if resampling to a lower sample rate doesn't make sense to you, basically means that we are purposefully, intentionally taking down the quality of the sample to make it sound more vintage. So it has a similar effect to a low pass filter, but it gives it a more of a lo-fi effect. I'll show you what it does. So this is the standard sample rate of 44,000. And once you start to bring it down, it starts to sound warmer. And if we take it down even further, that's good for like vocals. But I like to leave it around 10,000 for a guitar. So thanks to Cymatics for sponsoring this video. This plugin is free. Go check it out in the description, as well as the FLP, also free, also in the description. Next up, we have DS10 Drum Shaper, which is normally meant for drums, but it works really well for other instruments like guitars. As you can see, we've increased the attack and the presence. So at the end, it's going to sound like this. Next up, we have the identical hi-hats. We have 2 of them, and I can prove they're identical by comparing them to the original song. So this is the original versus the hi-hat. So look at this versus the original hi-hat. So these are the hi-hats, and they play a basic 2-step pattern. Then we have the identical clap. I'm not going to compare the EQ every single time, but trust me, it's the identical clap. Then after another 8 bars, we're adding in the 808 and the snare. Both of them are identical. I found the exact samples that they used. This is the snare, which is the FETS snare. We've taken up the in, and we are playing 2 semitones up. Then finally, we have the identical 808 sample, and I think only OZ and me know the exact 808 sample that they used and how they edited it. And at first, I thought it was the overused 808, which sounds like this. But when you compare the waveforms, it doesn't look like the original. Even when you line it up, you can see, look at the beginning, it looks nothing like the original song. So I was thinking, that's weird, it sounds a lot like the overused 808, but it doesn't look like it at all. And I said, okay, what if we modify this 808? So I'm gonna show you exactly what they did to make this 808 look the exact same as the 808 that you can see in this song. First thing you can see is it doesn't line up at the start of the sample. So the first thing you do is go into the audio clip and take up the sample start until it lines up. So now you can see it lining up with the original, but it still doesn't match at the beginning. The next thing I did is put it on the mixer, and this is the most important part. We're adding Fruity Parametric EQ2, and we're adding this EQ. And I did so many iterations of this EQ to make sure it was sounding exactly the same. I'll show it up on the screen right now. I kept rendering it and comparing it, then rendering it and comparing it. So this is the EQ that you need. Then I put on DS10 drum shaper, took up the attack, took down the sustain, and put on soft clipper. Finally, I recorded that into Edison. And once you bring that into the playlist, watch this ready, you know this is going ready, it matches perfectly. That's right, folks, we found the identical 808. Anyway, that's it for the remake. Thanks very much for watching, and thanks to Cymatics for sponsoring this video. Go download their Origin plugin in the description below, as well as the FLP. And for those of you asking in the comments, I am also working on Fair Trade, featuring Travis Scott, another big song from his latest album. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys next time.